The morning they found me on the floor of my room. I wasn't in pain. I was smiling. That's the part nobody understood. The nurses rushed in. My blood pressure was dropping, and I lay there on the cold linoleum with my heart doing something it hadn't done in 60 years, and I was smiling like a fool. Before you understand why, you need to know what I lost 61 years ago, on a night so hot the air itself seemed to sweat. Before you understand why, you also need to know what I found again, in a room that smelled like antiseptic and old flowers, in the last chapter of my life. My name is Elizabeth Turner. I am 92 years old, and 3 months ago, I fell in love with a man young enough to be my grandson. Then I found out who his mother was, and everything I thought I understood about coincidence, about God, about the debts the past never stops collecting. All of it came apart in my hands like wet paper. I want to tell you about the woman I used to be, because the woman in that nursing home bed is easy to dismiss. Thin wrists, spotted hands, a voice that cracks in the middle of sentences. But once, I delivered babies in places where the electricity failed every night. I was an obstetrician. For 30 years, I worked in London hospitals, and for 6 of those years, the years that mattered most, the years I still dream about, I worked with a humanitarian medical mission in West Africa. A village outside a town I won't name, because the town doesn't exist anymore, not really, not the way it was. I was 31 years old. I had already lost a husband to a car accident 2 years before. I had no children of my own. My body, ironically, the very body that had delivered thousands of babies, could not carry one to term. I had tried 3 times. I had buried 3 small hopes. So I went to Africa instead. I told myself it was medicine. It was really grief, wearing a stethoscope. There was a girl there, Amara, 19 years old, married at 17, pregnant with her first child. Her husband had left for work in the capital and never sent word. She used to sit outside the clinic in the evenings, humming to herself, one hand resting on her belly like she was holding a secret. We became close, in the way that happens fast when you're far from home and someone reminds you of the person you used to be before. Loss hollowed you out. "You will deliver my baby," she told me one evening. Not a question. "I hope so," I said. "No." She shook her head, smiling. "You will. I already decided." I laughed. I didn't know yet that some decisions are made by people who can see further than the rest of us. 3 months later, on a night thick with heat and the sound of insects, Amara went into labor. It was not an easy birth. I remember the lantern light flickering. I remember her sweat-soaked hands gripping mine hard enough to bruise. I remember the moment the baby's heart rate dropped, and I thought, "Not tonight. Not this one, please." I remember screaming for the other nurse to bring more clean water. I remember the baby's first cry. A boy. Amara wept holding him, and I wept too, because some part of me, the part that had lost 3 babies of my own, needed that boy to live more than I had ever needed anything. "What will you name him?" I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. "Samuel," she said, "because you prayed over him like he was already lost, and God gave him back." I didn't think about that name again for 61 years. That's the thing about the past. It doesn't warn you before it comes back. The nursing home is called Ashwood Manor, which sounds grander than it is. Beige walls. A television permanently tuned to a channel nobody watches. A garden nobody walks in because the paths are too uneven for wheelchairs. I had accepted, by 92, that my life had narrowed to a single room and a single window. I did not expect anything else from it. I did not want anything else from it. Then Samuel started on the ward. He was tall, The kind of tall that makes a room feel smaller, with a laugh that came easily and hands that were gentle with old bodies in the way that can't be taught, only felt. The first time he came into my room, he knocked even though the door was open. "Mrs. Turner, I'm Samuel. I'll be helping out on this floor a few days a week." "Dr. Turner," I corrected, out of habit more than vanity. He smiled. "Dr. Turner. My mistake." "Everyone makes it," I said. "Nobody expects a woman my age to have been anything before this." Something flickered across his face. Curiosity, maybe. "What kind of doctor?" "Obstetrician. I delivered more babies than I can count." "That's incredible," he said, and he meant it. I could tell, because he sat down on the edge of the visitor's chair instead of standing in the doorway the way the others did, the ones already halfway to the next room in their minds. I didn't know yet that his question would open a door I thought had closed forever. Over the following weeks, Samuel became the reason my days had shape again. He brought me tea before his shift ended. He asked about my work. Really asked, the way almost no one had in 20 years. He listened when I talked about the babies I'd delivered, the mothers I'd lost, the ones I'd saved. "You talk about it like it happened yesterday," he said once. "Some days it feels like it did," I said. "Old age is strange, Samuel. The recent years blur together, but the ones that mattered, they stay sharp as knives." I noticed things about him a woman my age has no business noticing. The way his forearms looked when he rolled his sleeves up. The warmth that came off him like a stove in winter. I was ashamed of it at first. 92 years old, noticing a man of 31. But shame is a young person's luxury. I had run out of time to waste on it. "Do you think it's foolish?" I asked him once, half joking, half not. "For a woman my age to still feel things?" He didn't laugh, the way I half expected. "I think," he said slowly, "that feeling things is the only proof we're still alive. I'd be more worried if you'd stopped." I looked at his face for a long moment. "You have kind eyes," I said. "Your mother must be very proud of you." His expression changed. Something moved behind his eyes. Quick, like a fish under dark water. Gone before I could name it. "She would have been," he said quietly. "She died when I was young." I didn't push. But that sentence lodged itself somewhere in me, small and sharp, like a splinter I couldn't yet find. The friendship deepened in the way things do when two lonely people find each other in an unlikely place. I started looking forward to his shifts more than I looked forward to anything else. He started staying longer than his job required. The staff noticed. Nurse Patricia gave me a look one afternoon that I understood perfectly. "You're glowing," she said. "I haven't seen you glow in the 4 years I've worked here." "Don't be ridiculous," I said, but I was smiling when I said it. "He asks about you when you're not around," she added. "Wants to know if you slept well, if you ate." That night I lay awake for a long time, feeling something I hadn't felt in 6 decades. Not comfort, not gratitude, but want. The particular, foolish, undignified want of a heart that refuses to check the calendar. I told myself it didn't matter what kind of feeling it was. There would be no future in it either way. I was 92. Whatever this was, it would end with me, the way everything in my life now ended with me. But then Samuel asked a question that cracked something open. We were talking about his childhood. He rarely spoke of it, and I'd learned to wait for the moments he chose to share. "I was born in West Africa," he told me one evening, out of nowhere. "My mother raised me alone for a few years before we moved to London. She used to tell me a story about the night I was born. Said there was almost no chance I'd survive it." My chest tightened. "What happened?" She said the birth went wrong. My heart stopped, or nearly did. There was a doctor there, a foreign doctor, a woman, working with some humanitarian mission. My mother said this woman fought for me like I was her own child. Prayed over me, she said, when everyone else had given up. The room seemed to tilt. She named me after that moment, Samuel continued. Said I was given back to her. That's actually where Samuel comes from, in my family. It's not a family name at all. It's I guess you'd call it a memorial name. For a night she almost lost me. I could not speak. Elizabeth? He leaned forward, concerned. Are you all right? You've gone pale. I wasn't all right. I was 61 years and 9,000 kilometers away, in a hut with a lantern and a girl gripping my hand hard enough to bruise. What was your mother's name? I asked, and my voice did not sound like my own. Amara, he said. Why? I did not sleep that night. I lay in the dark, turning the pieces over and over, the way you turn a key in a lock that shouldn't fit, but somehow does. Amara. A boy named Samuel, born in a village outside a town that no longer exists. A heart that stopped and started again beneath my hands. It could be another Amara, another Samuel. Africa is vast, and 31 is not so young an age that the math couldn't simply not add up. But some part of me, the part that had held that baby, that had heard his first cry, that had wept with his mother, already knew. The next day I asked him more. Carefully. The way you approach an animal that might startle? Your mother, I said. Did she ever tell you the doctor's name? The one who delivered you? He frowned, thinking. She did, actually. I was young, I don't remember it clearly. Something with an E. Eleanor, maybe, or Elizabeth, I said. He went very still. She used to say the name like it was a kind of prayer, he said slowly. I hadn't thought about it in years. Elizabeth? Yes, that was it. Neither of us said anything for a long moment. The television in the hallway murmured to nobody. Somewhere a food cart rattled past. Elizabeth, Samuel said again. And this time it wasn't a memory. It was a question aimed directly at me. It was me, I said. I delivered you, Samuel. 61 years ago. In a hut outside a village I can't even find on a map anymore. Your heart stopped. I prayed over you the way your mother said. I have never, in 61 years, I have never stopped thinking about that night. He sat down heavily in the chair, as though his legs had simply given up the argument. That's not possible, he whispered. That's Elizabeth. That's not a coincidence. That's not... How does something like that even happen? I don't know, I said honestly. I've delivered hundreds of babies. I don't know why yours is the one I still dream about. I don't know why, of every nursing home in this city, you would end up assigned to mine. I don't know why an old woman's heart would still have room to fall for the boy she once held in her hands, grown into a man. His head snapped up. What did you say? I hadn't meant to say it. It had slipped out, the way true things do when the rest of your defenses have already collapsed. I said I don't know why my heart still has a room, I said, quieter this time. For you. I want to tell you it was simple after that. A tearful reunion, a tidy bow tied on decades of longing. It was not simple, because the secret didn't end with my delivering him. The secret had a second half, one I had buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself it never happened. Amara did not simply vanish from my life after that night. I stayed in that village for another 8 months. I watched Samuel grow from a fragile newborn into a baby who gripped my finger with startling strength. I loved that child the way you love something that nearly wasn't yours to love at all. And then Amara got sick. a fever the clinic didn't have the medicine to fight. I was not just her doctor. I was, by then, her friend, the person she trusted most in a village far from her own family. She asked me, in her last lucid days, to promise her something. "If anything happens to me," she said, her hand weak in mine, "you find a way to make sure he's safe. Promise me, Elizabeth." I promised. She died 3 days later. I have never told anyone what happened after that. Not because it was shameful, but because it was the single greatest failure of conscience in my life, and confessing it meant admitting that I had chosen my own devastation over a dead woman's dying wish. I was supposed to help place Samuel with family. Amara had a sister in the capital. I had her address written on a scrap of paper I carried in my coat pocket for 2 weeks, and then my mission assignment ended. My replacement arrived. I was ordered back to London. I told myself the aid organization would handle it, that they had procedures, contacts, people whose job it was to do exactly what I had promised to do myself. I told myself my grief over losing 3 babies of my own, over losing my husband, over losing Amara, had made me too raw to be trusted with one more fragile life. I left. I never confirmed the sister received him. I never wrote to check. For 61 years, I did not know if Samuel Okoye had lived or died, safe or lost, because I broke a promise to a dying woman and called it self-preservation. "I failed you," I told him, my voice breaking apart on the words. "I promised your mother I would see you safely to your family, and I left. I don't know how you ended up all right. I don't know how any of this happened, but it was not because of me. It was in spite of me." Samuel was quiet for a long time. "My mother's sister raised me," he finally said. "She brought me to London when I was 4. She used to talk about a foreign doctor sometimes. Said she never got the chance to properly thank her. Said the doctor disappeared before she could find her." "That was me running," I said. "Not disappearing. Running, because I was a coward, and it was easier to believe someone else would fix what I couldn't face." "You saved my life the night I was born," Samuel said quietly. "You didn't have to keep saving it forever, Elizabeth. Nobody gets to carry a debt like that alone for 61 years. I let your mother down. You kept your promise the only way that mattered," he said. "I'm alive. I grew up loved. My aunt made sure of that, with or without your letter. You gave me my first chance at life. That's not a small thing to walk away from feeling guilty about." I wept then. Not the polite tears of an old woman, but something older and rawer, 61 years compressed into a single unraveling. I won't pretend the story ends with romance in the way you might expect. I am 92. Whatever Samuel and I are to each other, it isn't a love story with a wedding at the end of it. But it is a love story all the same. He comes every day now, not because his shift requires it, but because his words, "Family doesn't clock out." We are not, strictly, family. Or perhaps we are exactly that, the strangest, most improbable kind. The doctor who caught him falling into the world, 61 years apart, catching each other again at the far edge of it. Some nights he brings his own children. Yes, he has 2, a boy and a girl, and they call me Grandma Elizabeth without anyone ever deciding that's what I should be called. It simply happened, the way the truest things in a life tend to happen, without permission, without a plan, arriving exactly when they're needed, and not a moment before. I told you at the beginning that they found me on the floor, smiling. That was the day my heart nearly stopped. Not from grief this time, but from an old artery finally giving out under the weight of 92 years. The nurses thought I'd fallen in fear. I hadn't. I'd fallen holding Samuel's hand, mid-sentence, telling him about the night I delivered him, and for one impossible moment it felt like time had folded in on itself, and I was back in that hut, hearing a baby's first cry, and I was here, in a beige room in London, feeling my own heart falter under the same boy's grown hands. I did not think, this is how I die. I thought, I got to see how the story ended. I got to see that the promise was kept after all, just not by me alone. They stabilized me. I'm still here, dictating this account to a nurse's aide who is far too patient with an old woman's rambling because I decided that some stories are worth telling before the teller runs out of time. If you take one thing from this, an old woman's foolish, improbable, impossible love wrapped around a secret that took 61 years to surface, let it be this. The debts of the heart do not vanish simply because we've stopped looking at them. They wait. And sometimes, if you're strange enough and lucky enough and alive long enough, they come walking back through your door wearing a nurse's uniform, asking if you slept well, calling you by the wrong title, and giving you one more chance to finally pay what you owed. I paid mine. And in paying it, I fell in love one last time. Not despite my age, but because of everything my age had taught me about what almost slipped away, and what, against every reasonable expectation, came back.